Hey guys, I am back out in the shed. I got a new rear sprocket, new chain, new front sprocket. We're going to be replacing it all on this little 200 that we fixed up. Last day I was driving the bike, I actually bent the rear sprocket. I bent it pretty bad so the chain wouldn't stay on. So I got a new 520 chain. It's going to be long, so we're going to have to chop that down. New front sprocket and a new rear sprocket. It does come with the little rubber grommets and stuff, like for a little bit of shock absorption. But anyways, I'm going to show you guys a very quick rundown on how to replace the front sprocket, rear sprocket, and the chain. Ideally, if you're replacing one or two of the sprockets, like a front sprocket or a rear, you're supposed to, by rights, change out both of the sprockets and the chain at the same time. So I got all three. Even though I just bent the rear, it would make more sense to replace all of it at the same time, so that way they wear evenly together. Okay guys, so to get easier view of what we got to do, I'm going to pop off this tire right here. Plus we need to have it off anyways. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this tire off, and then we can see what needs to be done in here. For this 200M, these lug nuts are actually 14 mils. So I'm going to continue loosening these off. Jack the bike up a little bit and pop this wheel off, and then I'll show you guys how to swap out the chain and the sprockets. It's a relatively easy job, but the hardest part is actually going to be cutting the chain and getting it to the proper size. You can actually buy the right size chain, but locally I couldn't get the right size chain, so I'm going to be trimming it down to fit this all. Well, you can see I got the wheel off. It's just 14mm lug nuts. This sprocket back here is bent, so we're going to be swapping out this sprocket, front one, and the chain. So if you got your wheel off and normally you have a guard right here, you're going to have to take out this bolt and one right here, and then pop off your clamps, and you should be able to pop out your guard. I currently got the chain off because it was popped off last time I bent the sprocket, but I'll show you guys. I got the chain over on the bench, and I'll just show you how to pop the clip out. So once you're basically in here, all you have to do is locate where your master link is. When I had the bike out last, the chain was actually over here on the shaft. So you can see wore some of the paint off. So yeah, this is kind of the first step if you're going to swap out your sprockets after you get the wheel off, is locate your master link wherever it may be to on the chain, and just pop the clip out and let go of the chain itself. And then you can actually usually pull it free. Over here there's going to be a guard on normally, and that guard is just held in place with two bolts, so we can pop the guard out. So normally if you're looking at your chain that's on the bike, you had to find where the master link is. You're going to see one odd one that has a clip around it. I just got this one laid on top. It's going to have a clip like actually locked in place. You want to take like a screwdriver and pop that clip off. Then you can actually just let the chain go very easily. You can see that pretty much wants to let go already. So that's pretty much what you got to do, is to get your chain off. If your chain is super tight, you'll have to loosen it first. Not a big deal. It's only the 4 axle bolts and the chain tensioner. On the 200M, normally this has a guard that goes right here. I took this off a while ago because I've been waiting on my sprocket to come in. But you can see it literally has the 2 bolts. The one right here and the one down here. So if you have that guard on, you're going to have to take the 2 bolts out, and then you can kind of wiggle out that guard. Okay, so I'm back here again. These little front sprocket bolts, they're actually just 10 mils, and they shouldn't be overly tight. You can see this front sprocket wasn't wore down too bad, but I bent the back sprocket, so I might as well swap this one out while we're here. It's only a $10 sprocket. But yeah, these are 10 mils. For the cover, they're 8 mils. You can tell because they're smaller. So we'll just pop these out right quick. There should be a little tiny bit of play in the counter shaft sprocket. But yeah, we'll pop these 3 out, 10 mils, and take out that front sprocket. Forgot to mention, if your sprocket's rotating, you stick the bike in gear, and then that way you'll get a little bit of resistance. These bolts shouldn't be overly tight. Like, they should be relatively easy to come off. I sprayed a tiny bit of penetrating oil on these earlier today, but didn't really need it because they weren't on very tight. Just the last bolt right there. Here's a little plate. Being a bit tricky to move. So yeah guys, hopefully you don't have this kind of trouble. You can see here this is definitely welded, so I can't even get my front sprocket off. I gotta try to somehow grind down where that's been welded to. Yeah, you can see that on the video very clearly. Someone's got that end welded, so that sprocket will not slide off at all. So I gotta fix this, but you should not have this issue. But anyways, until I get that front sprocket taken care of, need to grind the welds off somehow. Let's go ahead and put on the back sprocket just so we get some stuff done here. As you can see here, this nut is going to come loose. I already got mine loose. Yours is going to probably be tight. So in order to get this sprocket out, we got to be able to slide it off the shaft. So the hub got to come off, which is not a big deal. It's only a safety pin should be through here, and then you got to back this nut loose. So you can see I already got mine loose. So I'll go ahead and I'll take that off. So that's bolt out, or nut off, I should say. Oh, drop the little washer. Okay, so we got the shaft exposed. Now in here on the sprocket, you're going to see the 4 obvious bolts. But what you may not see is the big C-clip right here. See if I can zoom in on it. See that? That's like a split ring or like a big clamp. I can't remember the proper name. I think it's called a split ring. But we're gonna have to take these 4 bolts loose and pop this off. This kind of retains the sprocket in place. So even if the 4 bolts were gone, it could technically stay in place with that little clip. These sprocket bolts are actually 12 millimeters. So I'm just gonna crack them loose, and then we'll replace the sprocket. So I went ahead, 4 bolts off. You'll see, watch. Try wiggling it. That sprocket won't move. So I'll pop this clip out, and you can see how where it's split right here. I'm just going to take a screwdriver and just pop the ring up. So once you pop that clip out, we'll get the back sprocket off. I forgot, I actually got the proper tool over on my toolbox. Totally forgot about it. These are just circlip pliers. You squeeze them together, you pull out. But if you don't have these, you can actually just use a screwdriver, which I was going to do until I forgot I actually had these pliers. But yeah, as long as you stick these in between that split and squeeze on it, this literally pops out of place. As you can see, it's dangling. So take that down. Now this will come right out of the way. You can see the horrible bend on it. I smoked a rock on this. So one of my next projects after this is all set up again is extending that skid plate all the way back to here. Don't need to worry about keeping this top plate because this comes on a new sprocket that you buys. Wow, you can really see the bend there. So this sprocket is pretty much junk now. Can't really take that plate out because that's like a pressed fit. I'm going to go ahead and just wipe everything down, just give it a little clean, and then we'll pretty much do the exact same thing and throw the new sprocket back in place. Okay guys, the sprocket is now in place. We got the safety clip on it, we got the nuts on it. So I guess we might as well leave the wheel off for now. We'll go ahead and size up that chain and start cutting that down. I still got to swap out that front sprocket, but I got to figure out what to do because it's welded. These bikes are simple to work on, but sometimes you come across issues like that where something is stripped out badly or something is welded that shouldn't be welded. So that makes the job a little bit harder. Now if you bought the proper sized chain, I think it's 90 links, you won't have to cut it, so you can kind of skip my next step of sizing the chain. But with mine, I got a generic 520 chain that's non-O-ring, is a cheap chain. But I like to try out the cheap one. I want to see how long it lasts. If it's no good, I'll get an O-ring one in the future. So just pull out the the new chain out of the box right here. I was for certain that I was getting the cheaper chain, but you can see they sold me the O-ring chain with the mesh link and some O-rings. So that's excellent. I got a better chain, so I think I paid for a cheap chain and ended up with a better chain, so that worked out. But anyways, there's the old chain. You can see just by even moving around, like it has a lot more play into it. Like this one here, you can tell it's a lot stiffer. It's a newer chain. The old chain, well, that's kind of what you expect. You get a lot of play anyway. But anyhow, we'll get ready to size this up, and I'll go over and loosen up the actual bolts anyways, because we're going to need to adjust the chain. So for loosening the chain and tightening the chain, in here we got the 4 bolts that we dealt with before in the previous video. We got the 2 right here and the 2 underneath, or I got the jack here, so I had to move that. But there's 4 main bolts. These are usually a 3/4 or 19 mil. And then we got the chain tensioner, which you can see down right there. So essentially what you got to do is we got to loosen up those 4 bolts. Then this whole axle can float, it can move back and forth. And we got to loosen up that chain tensioner and get the tension off that. So like once you got your 4 bolts loose, you can typically move the axle back or forward or whichever way you need. And the chain tensioner, all that does is that it pulls the axle back, and then normally you would tighten your 4 bolts and lock the axle in place. So I'm going to go ahead, move this jack around. We'll loosen up those 4 bolts, loosen up the chain tensioner. Then we'll size the chain up. Typically you want the chain tensioner pretty much loose when you go to fit the chain on, because you want to be able to tighten the chain all the way in based on your need, right? So if the chain starts to get a bit slack, you want to be able to tighten on that chain tensioner and pull the chain tight. You don't want it like all the way in and then you'd have no room for adjustment. So I've got a nice block of wood on the bike. Got the big old jack out of the way. So showing you guys the first top 2 bolts up here, and now down underneath you can see here's my chain tensioner. It's got a couple nuts on it and a lock nut. Yours may just have the 1 or 2 nuts. And here's the other bolt and the one right here. So I'm just going to loosen up this chain tensioner, and then I'm going to loosen the 4 bolts, and then this whole axle carrier, which is on the disc brake on, they'll be able to float, and then we'll go size up the chain, cut the chain down, and then that's it. We'll pretty much be in good shape. Okay guys, I got those 4 bolts are now loose. The 2 on the top and the 2 on the bottom. The one with the chain tensioner. They're all loose. They're actually 17 mil, but the one I replaced down here, because the welds broke, I replaced it when I done my disc brake conversion. That one was a 19 mil, that's why I was thinking 19. So we got the bolts loose, we got the rear sprocket fitted on. Normally I'd like to have the new front sprocket, but it's welded on for some unknown reason. So once I figure out this front sprocket situation, we'll throw the chain on this, we'll tighten it up to the factory spec, about an inch, roughly 1 inch to 2 inches of play. But I'm going to go a little bit on the tighter side, because any brand new chain is most likely to stretch a bit as it wears in. Okay guys, we actually made some progress there yesterday. You can see I got the sprocket willing to come off now. It was welded on pretty badly, but you can see the damage here. I took a chisel and a hammer, and I was able to beat off all those little blobs of cold weld. So now that that's all taken care of, we can literally go ahead and pop the sprocket off. You can see the sprocket itself is not too bad condition, but it's $10 for the new front sprocket, so spent out all the money to get the new chain and rear sprocket, so may as well swap this out. So I think what tends to happen a lot of times is that for this the output shafts coming out of the engine, these splines tend to get mangled up or destroyed. So people tend to weld these little front sprockets on, which will work. Is not recommended, but it will work. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and throw the new sprocket on and the retaining clip. I'm going to put a couple little small spot welds again, because this shaft is damaged on this bike, unfortunately. But yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We'll stick the front sprocket on, and then we'll stick on the chain. So the front sprocket just slides right over the splines, nice and easy, and then you slide on and line up the holes for the retaining clip, or the little retaining plate. So I'm just tightening up the bolts here now. Once these are snug, I'll tighten them up with the ratchet, and then we'll be good to go on the front sprocket. There should normally be a little bit of play, so that's okay. But it's unfortunate that this shaft is damaged. Might actually put a little blob of weld on it just the way it was, because I don't really trust it where it's damaged. But rather than split the whole case and take the engine out, if it works, it works. Okay, so if you buy the long chain that's not the proper size, you're going to have this issue. As you can see here, I just put the new chain on, and you can see it's excessively long. So for sizing the chain, what you essentially want to do is you basically want to put the chain in place. Let's see if it'll fit in here now. You basically want to put the chain in place. You can see we have a lot of slack, and then you're going to want to cut it where it lines up. So if I was to pull this tight with two hands, I'd see where it lines up and then cut it. But another thing you can always do as well is use the old chain as a reference. But by doing this is a brand new chain and it shouldn't have any stretch to it. It's a good way to get the proper size. Just keep in mind when you do cut the chain, just measure twice, cut once of course. You don't want to cut the chain too short. Yeah, we're getting clean here, everything's looking nice. So I'll go cut the chain, whip out the grinder, and just cut out the rivet, the one I want. You can actually buy a fancy cutting tool, but I don't have it. I just normally I'll just cut off whichever rivet down here that I want to cut, and then I'll just use a small punch and punch out the link. Alright, let's do that. Okay, as you can see here, I just cut the chain where I wanted it to. If you haven't cut a chain before and you're a bit nervous, just cut it a bit longer. But yeah, once you grind off the rivet, as you can see, like I don't have any special tools. Just you can see the rivet just slides out. That's all I do essentially. You can see there's no damaging around here or anything. I got to cut to the size I want. We got the same type of end that we need for the other side. Grab the other side, you'll see. So that's where your master link will join these together. That's the O-ring that we don't need. It's one of the ones that just came out of that link I cut. But that's all let's do it for cutting the chain. So I'm gonna go throw this on the bike. We'll just wrap it around the sprockets like we did earlier to test the length. And then we'll go ahead and tighten the chain to a good tension. Okay guys, so I gotta get ready to conclude this video up. I had a few projects going on, so kind of got sidetracked, and this job took longer for myself than I had anticipated. But anyways, I'm gonna get ready to throw this chain on the bike. I just want to do a little quick video on master links. So when I bought this O-ring chain, it came with this style master link. You can see here it's O-ring style as well, but it has to be riveted. That's a rivet style link. It's a good link, more permanent. It's supposed to be more reliable. But I'm used to using this clip style. So with the clip style links, if you try to put your old one on, you'll notice that it's actually not long enough. So I had to go out and spend the $5 or $6 and buy a clip style O-ring link. To put this style on that came with my chain, this is the rivet style link. This actually requires a proper chain tool, and it's like a $140 or $150 tool. And for the sake of how many times I deal with this style, like this is my first time actually seeing this kind, I'm not going to use it. I'd rather spend the $6 and buy a new O-ring chain with the clip, new grease and all. So yeah, let's do it. Let's throw chain on. We'll get the new master link in place. The only thing to keep in mind is that the clip has to be placed in a way that basically it doesn't fall off with the chain. So in terms of your rotation of the sprocket, you want to put the clip on, so for the torque it will try to push the clip on rather than push it off. So I'll show you that guys now shortly. I'll throw the chain on, stick the master link on. Okay guys, I got the clip on down right there, you can see. Pretty sure that that's the correct orientation because the chain rotates this way when you're driving. So in that case it will force this back piece on rather than make the clip fall off, because if it is installed wrong, that little tiny clip can fall off. So I still got the 4 bolts loose at the moment, and I'm just tightening up the chain. You can see this is the slack. I'm going to leave them on that just enough that it's not overly tight and it's not overly loose that it'll skip. And I'll check this like a week later or 2 weeks later, because the chain may stretch where it's a brand new chain. But for tightening the chain, you just tighten the chain tensioner, like you actually ratchet it already tighty, nice and tight. You'll notice the chain will pull tight. And yeah, you just lock it in place with those 4 main bolts. 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. That'll hold your axle tight in that position, so your chain will stay tight. So last thing to do is tighten up this hub, put the safety pin through, and put the front sprocket cover. It's up there. Put that back on. That's just the 2 bolts. That's it. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten my chain up, retighten those 4 bolts, and then basically call this a day. Another thing you might want to do as well is with any new chain, like it does come with some grease, but it's good to lube it up again anyways. So I'm going to lubricate the chain up. I use this gear oil myself because I actually done a bit of reading on it, and even the original manual that came with the bike said to use 80W90 gear oil. So I'll lube this up and we'll be hitting the trails for another video now shortly. So I'll see you guys soon. Hopefully this can help, or hopefully this video has helped. See you later.